In this video, I want to talk a little bit about a general approach to modeling, specifically as it refers to, as it relates to the hard edges that we get with primitive objects and with planes and things like that. This is just a default cube, and when I render this cube, you can see that the corners of the cube are very, very hard edged. They're really perfect. They meet at absolutely 90 degrees, and there's no highlight on the edge to show any kind of softness whatsoever. This kind of a render is kind of a giveaway that this is a computer-generated image, and it lacks a lot of realism. Taking a look at some photographs, you can see that even the hardest edged objects like this Microsoft Surface here, there's a little bit of a highlight on the edge. There's a little bit of a transition, kind of a bevel on the edge. This is more obvious in other examples. Here's a PC tower that is made to be square, to have hard edges, and even these edges are softer. You can see there's a little bit of a highlight on there. There's a nice little specular highlight on the corner, and this really adds to the realism of an object like this. Here's some plywood. You got the same kind of a thing. It's a little harder to see in this just because of the surface quality of this, but you can see that there's just a little bit of a highlight on the edge, even though these are sawn to represent a nice sharp corner. Looking again at some furniture and architectural appointments, kitchen appliances, you can see that here this edge is broken on purpose. The designer of this cutting board took a little file or a little bit of sandpaper to the edge here just to give it a little bit of softness. Same thing with the edge of the countertop. The corners over here, if you get close up on those corners, you're going to see that highlight. Architecture, same thing. Baseboards, the corners of walls are a little bit softer, and then as you get into some larger, more organic shapes, you're going to see a lot of softness in here. Okay, so what we want to do with our work here is we want to soften these edges. So with a cube, you're familiar with pressing the 3 key to give yourself a let's just put the wireframe on shaded here. So you're familiar with pressing the 3 key, and that's going to give you a smooth mesh preview. And in the case of a of a 6-sided cube, that smooth mesh preview will create an actual sphere out of this cube. It averages all of the edges so that they curve gently into the next adjacent edge. And a cube is clearly the most extreme example of this. So for example, if I take this and I go to modify, convert a smooth mesh preview to polygons, this is what I get. So this is the polygonal representation of what pressing the 3 key will do. So instead of a 6-sided, we have 16 times 6. Let's just look at the so instead of, what we've done is converted a 6-sided cube into a 96-sided sphere. And one of the advantages of a sphere like this is that you don't have any triangles at the poles. Everything is a quad on this sphere. But that's not what we really want. I mean, if we want to create a cube but we just want to soften the edge, we have to do something else. So I want to point out a couple of strategies for softening the edges. We already saw how if you hit the 3 key on a sphere like this, on a cube like this, it turns it into a sphere. But if we can anchor these edges with additional edge loops, we're going to force this to stay more like a cube and less like a sphere. So the first thing that we can do here is just insert some edge loops here. I'm going to use the Multicut tool with the control key. And the Multicut tool is like a split polygon tool. And you hold down the control key, it forces it into creating edge loops. I'm going to just approximate the center. There are ways that you can snap this, but I don't want to get into that right now. So I just cut this polygon into 4 sections for each face. And when I do that and click on the 3 key, you can see that the center edge in each face sort of holds that shape to a cube. And this one is very, very soft. And you have to remember that what's happening is that each one of these corners is being averaged out based on the position of the next adjacent edge. When the next adjacent edge is the opposite corner, it's going to make it completely round. But when it's in the middle, it's going to hold that form. Right? So the closer you place these internal edge loops to the corners, the tighter a corner you're going to get. So let's go ahead and just select one of these edge loops here, and I'm just going to move it for now. I'll move it closer here, and then this one I'll move closer here. And by the way, when I select these, I'm double clicking on the edge, and that selects the entire edge loop. So I'll pull that in closer there. Now I don't have any edge loops down here in the corners, in the other corners. I'm only worried about this corner right here. So if I select this and hit the 3 key, you can see how those edges are nice and tight, whereas the ones that don't have the extra edge loops are very, very round. So that's a pretty good strategy in how to create harder edges. So here's a quick render of that. It's a low quality render, but you can definitely see that you get that little highlight in there. So one strategy then, if I wanted to do this for the whole cube, let me just undo what I've got here. The strategy for dealing with the entire cube here would be to insert these edge loops. Control, Multicut, and I'm going to go horizontally. I'm going to go around this way, and then I want to go around this way. Coming around here, I need an extra one here. Down at the bottom, I need an extra one on this edge, and that should, I need an extra one right there. So I've basically got 3 edges for every corner, and what that will do then for me is hit the 3 key, and that gives me a nice cube with a little bit of a highlight on the edges. Again, this is a low quality render. You're seeing a little bit of artifact and shadow on there that you wouldn't see if this was a higher quality render, but it's a much more natural shape than this cube over here. All right, so that's one strategy, is to insert edge loops to protect your edges. Another strategy is to just use the bevel tool. What the bevel tool will do, let's just select one of these edges here. The bevel tool is located in the Edit Mesh menu under Bevel, and you have some options here that you can deal with. The bevel tool is also located in the Modeling Toolkit, which is over on the right when you hit that little hammer right there. So I'm going to use the one in the Modeling Toolkit, and I'm going to hit Bevel. And instantly what that does is it cuts the corner halfway to each adjacent edge. So it goes halfway across the top, halfway across the bottom, eliminates that corner, and gives me that angle. If I hit the 3 key, you can see how it's trying to hold that shape a little bit more. When you use this Poly Bevel tool, the first option that you see this little submenu here, and you have this fraction, and it's this fraction of 0.5 which causes it to bevel halfway across the adjacent face. when I hover my mouse over there, you can see that it creates this double arrow, which I can just click and drag and make that bevel a little bit smaller. So I can just bevel just like that. All right, now there are a couple of caveats to this. First of all, when I bevel this, notice that the side edges here, or the side faces here, are now 5-sided faces. So that's undesirable. It's something that you want to be careful of when you use the bevel tool. Bevel doesn't automatically give you quads. So one thing that you can do is increase the number of segments that you have. And let's just increase this to 2. Okay, and then you can use the same multi-cut tool to split from here to here, and now you can see that this face is 4-sided. 1, 2, 3, 4, and this face is 4-sided. So by splitting like this, I'm able to repair this bevel and create this a 4-sided uh, 4-sided figure on each side. All right, so let's just hit the 3 key. And you can see that, that changes the nature of this. It's not exactly what we're looking for, but you can just see, what it does. It holds the shape a little bit more at the bevel. Let me just undo this. If my goal here is a soft-edged cube, what I'm going to want to do is select all of my edges, and I can bevel them all at the same time. So each one of these is chamfered to half the distance of the adjacent edge, or the adjacent face, and I can change the fraction here to make it go much closer. So this is much more representative of the soft edge cube that we're looking for. But notice that when I do this bevel, I get a triangle at each corner, and that's also undesirable. So I'm going to just leave that at 0.1 for now. And that has to do with the number of segments that we have. So if I change the segments of the bevel to 2, you can see that that triangle gets broken up and is now 3 quads. The rule of thumb here is that when you use an even number of segments, 2, 4, 6, 8, you're always going to get quads. If you use an odd number, 1, 3, 5, you're always going to end up with that triangle in the middle. So the rule of thumb that I like to use is to always use an even number of segments. So let's just hit we'll hit the 3 key on this, okay, and do a quick render. And you can see that I've got a nice soft edge. The same rules apply, so that the closer these adjacent edges are to the corner, the tighter this is going to be. All right, so let me just I'm going to select this here and duplicate it so that we can do a little comparison. When you duplicate this object, it no longer contains the construction history here. But when I look at the original, I still have my poly bevel on this. So I can take my fraction, and instead of 0.1, I can cut that in half, or cut that by a larger fraction. So let's make that 0.25. Sorry, 0.025. Okay, and that's going to tighten up. The position of the beveled edges. So if I do a render here, you can see that the 0.025 bevel is much tighter than the 0.1 bevel. Okay, so when you're modeling, you still have that little highlight on there. This is a much more natural looking surface, but when you're modeling, you want to keep that kind of thing in mind. So I've gone ahead and opened up the file that has the steps of the of the temple that we made in an earlier video. I'm just going to render this, and you can see that that my steps are very hard edged. I've got very sharp corners on each one. Let me just pull in a little closer here. I've got very hard edges on this temple. So what I'll do is select all the edges, and this is, you can be a lot more specific than this, but what I'll do is go into my bevel tool here. A single segment, I'm ending up with just one triangle up there in the top corner. The rest seem to be okay, but let's change that segment to 2. That's going to give me quads. Hit the 3 key and do a quick render. So even with the fraction set at 0.1, I'm getting a nice softer edge with a little bit of a highlight on there. That's probably softer than I want to get. So I can go back into the construction history. Let's hit the 1 key again. Go back into the construction history under the Poly Bevel. And I'm going to take my fraction, and instead of 0.5, let's cut that in half and make that 0.2 is good. So let's take a look at the render that we had here before. I'll save this. Let's just get rid of these. I'll save this render in the buffer, and I'll re-render. And you can see that it's giving me that nice soft look. So there's the 0.1, and there's the this is the 0.5, and this is the 0.2. So we can get a nicer, softer edge to this by protecting those edges with the bevel.